Good evening, comrades. Good evening, everybody. I think that the Boston School Bus Drivers Union, USW Local 8751, have persevered through a long, drawn-out 26-month struggle against a behemoth union buster and a city administration who was colluding with the police. They are now probably stronger than they have ever been, which is to say a lot, because they were never weak. We have documented the fighting spirit of the union in the pages of Workers' World throughout their history, and over many struggles that the union has participated in. Most of those struggles were not issues that related directly to 8751. This week's issue of the paper has another such article. The contract that the union signed in December 23, I think, provides for retroactive pay for all the workers going back to the expiration of the old contract, which was January of 2014. That is a significant amount of money for 900 workers. It's in the millions of dollars. And this money has not been paid. The company has delayed paying the workers this retroactive pay. I think that TransDev probably think that they can sow a division in the ranks of the union with this delay, but I believe that they will fail at this also. The reason I think this is that if you remember the situation, the four leaders were out of work for over 2 years, and when the contract was signed, their settlement was made. They got paid for all of their money that they were never paid for 2 years, plus the difference, but the other workers haven't. And I believe this could be deliberate on the part of the union to create this kind of a division, but I don't think it will work.
On the part of the company.
Thank you. I'm not sure what I said, but it must have been wrong because I got. Okay. The four fight leaders returned to work on January 5th. We've heard from various people how ecstatic the Busyards were when they returned. You know, hugs and kisses all around. And there was one anecdote. Somebody was passing out checks, and even though the settlement had been made, you know, things aren't real sometimes till you see it happen. And one of the workers said, "Oh, it's real. Here's this check for Steve." Steve Kirschbaum was one of the fired workers, and there was a check for him. So at that point, it was tangible for some folks, you know. Now let me find my place. While this union is more united than ever, there exists a small, rotten opposition who were in charge, so to speak, and they collaborate with the company during the bad times. This includes the former president. And what they have left is a mess for the new leadership, which is Team Solidarity, which are the four fired leaders plus the rest of their slate. What the previous leadership have left, I think, are hundreds of old grievances that they just didn't prosecute. They didn't fight for the workers very hard, and so now the current leadership, the president, Andre, and the Steves and other folks, and I think the grievance chair is now Gary Murchison. I'm sure he's buried under a lot of paper right now. So we haven't heard a whole lot from them recently since the victory. They've been working really hard to get rid of all of this backlog. Okay. In the fight against capital, it's advantageous for workers to form trade unions because our collective voices are louder than any one voice. On the face of it, this should mean that the larger a union, the more effective it should be. But this is not so. Most of the 900 or so members of USW 8751 are fighting members, and so they defend themselves in unity and solidarity. There are many large unions that could learn from their approach. I mentioned an article in this issue of the paper. In this article, it also speaks of the treachery of the leadership of the AFL-CIO back in 1981. This was a leadership that represented millions of workers, but cowered before the bosses, and we are still suffering the repercussions of their trepidation. There have been many setbacks since then. As an old union saying goes, if you don't have a union, fight for one. And if you have a union, fight to make it fight. Most trade unions today aren't fighting unions. Most of the leadership of the big unions operate by making deals and endorsements of politicians in hopes of getting some favor. Even when they don't get what was promised to them, they still do it again and again. If you remember EFCA, that the unions were banking on, Barack Obama was supposed to be our savior, but he dropped it as soon as he got into office, and all the unions supported him again in the second term around. So it's like something they just have to do. They just have to throw money at the Democratic Party, it seems, because all of these politicians that they support are Democrats, by the way. There will be a lot of hard-earned money spent again this election year on campaigns for politicians that will do nothing or next to nothing for workers. There's no doubt that the bigger a union is, the more effective it can be, but that is only its potential. For its potential to be realized, it has to flex its muscle at appropriate times. There were lots of serious flexing of muscles during Solidarity Days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you all don't know what that is, these were organizing days that 8751 had in Boston, and allies would come and we would have marches. One of them was actually a day after a court hearing on the steps, and that was beautiful. I was there actually, and it was so amazing that even all the court officers were standing around unbelieving what they were seeing, because they'd never seen anything like this in the city halls of in Boston before. Knowing the history of USW 8751, why did Veolia and Boston go down the road that they did? They spared no expense, and we know that capitalists like to accumulate lots of money, not just to throw it away on a crapshoot. They invest where they expect to get a return. It was worth it to them to try, because they recognized the special nature of USW Local 8751. With capitalism at a dead end, strong unions are a problem for the bosses right now. Well, they always are, but specifically now. They don't need examples like the Boston school bus drivers. It was a bit of a catch-22, and then they ended up between a rock and a hard place. These are the TransDevaswom I'm talking about. They also had to swallow some crow when they signed that contract, because they had promised that the workers would never return. During Steve's trial, I remember telling, actually, one of the lawyers, before the case was on, it was in the hallway, and this is a guy that I believe is a relative of a notorious South American president, and I covered him out because I'm not sure and I don't want to be charged for libel. But I think we also think he might have written the closing statement during the trial for the prosecution. Somebody said they saw him hand it over, you know. So these are really sleazy people. But, you know, they thought it was worth trying to defeat this union, even though they had to know it would have been a fight. But, you know, like I said, if any chance of winning, they will take it. We have the work of, this is a report. This report is the work of the Labor Committee of Workers' World. We've been doing a lot of work around the Boston struggle in recent years. But we also, you know, deal with other things. And I'm just going to report on a couple of things that are happening. The Southern Workers' Assembly will be having a school in March from the 4th to the 6th. The Boston school bus drivers are actually going to be leading a discussion on the lessons of the recent struggle there. So they're going to be going down to North Carolina with a van and a bunch of people. Comrade Dante from North Carolina, is he North Carolina again? Mm-hmm. Yes. Dante described the school as not an educational conference, but a strategic targeting of unions and workers we've been working with since 2012 to develop a cadre of workers to orient towards social unionism rather than just one particular union. There's also been a rejection of a contract by the California Teachers Union. I think there were some problems with the contract and that they traded off economic concessions for job security. And it would introduce a second tier in this, which is something that I think the UAW did and are really suffering from now. They're trying to undo. This union also is one of the highest paid public school unions in the country, and they have a very good pension. So they're very careful about protecting what they have. I don't have much more of a report on that. The Virginia House and Senate passed on Tuesday, I think, passed right-to-work resolutions to strengthen the state's anti-worker laws. There will be a ballot item in the November elections to amend the state's constitution. Right now, it is already a right-to-work state it has a law that prevents workers, that workers can't be compelled to join a union, but this is to amend the constitution to really enshrine it. Labor Fight Back Network, I think, is planning a national march in Washington. I don't think it's been concretized yet. We're trying to find out more about that. And of course, the Frederick's Free California, we're paying attention to see what comes out of that. And there are just many other struggles. The Fight for 15 is waging all over the country. There are lots of states getting involved. So while, we've been taking on the chin for a bit, workers, the assault continues, but so does the fight back, and it's growing, and I think we have an exciting future ahead. Thank you very much.